Hey, what's happening? It's Steve Knotts. In this video, I'm going to show you a remix of the track called Day in the Life from my friend Subspan. I'm going to show you how it started before, and then he gave me the session. I'll show you what I did with it to get it touched up and in shape with a couple of quick things, step by step, that you could actually do in your tracks to make better mixes with hard hit and low end. This 140 BPM. Let's take a little listen to the before and after.
Here's
the mix we're starting with. Okay, now I'm going to go to the after mix. One more time. What do you hear in the before mix? First off, I was like, the hi-hats are missing. Can barely hear the snare hi-hat thing. The kick is a very big, it's almost like out of proportion. I can feel the sub. The vocal's not bad. In the original, the vocal's good. Kick is kind of too big. Hi-hats are missing. Sub is there. Now, what are we doing after? Sub is bigger. Drums are definitely more present in the front. I feel like I get more detail out of the synths. And the vocal's still nice and upfront. So the questions are, what were the problems in the first mix and how did I fix them? Here is the Ableton project from the first version. And when I open up a mix that someone sends me, let me mute the vocals so I can talk. The first thing I look at is the master channel to see what is happening in the mix, what level are we at, and what's going on. I see there's a spectrum analyzer. It's bouncing all over the place, and I don't love these settings, so I'm going to show you spectrum settings that help me make better mixes. I can see we have a master channel effects rack with the universal channel strip from Mixitecture. Psyched to see that Subspan is using this. And then I'm wondering about the mix levels. Let's just loop this. First off, biggest red flag, the kick drum is jacked up. The kick drum is a loud signal in the channel. Those little meters in between are showing a full level at the input level. The output fader is all the way up. And at the master channel, that kick is causing full spectrum, full signal. There's almost no headroom left, which means the kick drum is huge and the rest of the mix is going to be crushed up to match the kick drum. So right away, I'm guessing this mix has probably got some compression situation on the master. That's a perfect example of making your mix too loud and then putting too much compression on the master channel to kind of fix it. If I turn off this master channel effects rack completely, what do we get? The master is clipping a bit, not crazy bad. Remember the hi-hats? That's a little snare tap hi-hat thing. That is not loud enough in the mix. And check this out, if I want to turn it up louder, this output fader is already at 0 dB. So even if I turn this up +6, it doesn't get me the level of hi-hats that I want. So to fix the hi-hats, I'm going to have to go into the hi-hat channel and raise the level coming through that channel before I can even get to the output fader to mix it at the level it should be for the track. Same thing on the snare. I can see there's a utility plugin with some minus gain. So the gain staging through the track is not aligned very optimally. It's kind of hard to mix with these faders at Unity when the gain staging is not working right. So what we're going to do is open up another session. We're going to see what happens when you get every sound coming through its own channel loudly and then mix with the output faders. Then we're going to look at maybe some frequency and dynamic stuff. So I don't want to tear this whole mix apart because that's not really necessary. The point is that we are seeing a beginning mix that has a couple of basic errors. The main thing is that the mix level at the master channel is too loud. Master channel is clipping, and then there's way too much compression on the master channel. And because of all those things, we're having problems where we can't hear the hi-hats, can't hear the snare. The kick is huge, the sub is a little wonky, vocals are okay, but it doesn't sound like a balanced professional mix ready for mastering. So we don't want to go any farther with that. I'm going to go to the after mix, Day in the Life, SK Mix 3, save changes, nope. And I did something fun on this one. I made notes of my edits. So if you look at the master channel, you can see a little kind of lesson plan The first thing I did was I put on SonarWorks on my master channel because I was listening in my monitors and I know I have them calibrated. SonarWorks is a plugin that applies some treatment to your output so that your ears hear a balanced sound. Like if you have speakers with way too much high end, SonarWorks would bring down the high end. Never mind that. That's just technical things that I did. First thing I did was that. Second, I changed the spectrum settings. Here's the after mix. Let's cut a loop, the same thing we were just listening to, verse 2, loop to next loop. I'm gonna mute the vocals because I'm talking. First thing is, grab these spectrum settings. Notice that with spectrum, the scale is staying the same, the line is staying in the middle, and you can kind of see which sounds are popping up and down. You don't have that thing where the line is calibrating way up and down every time. It's sort of staying in the same place. Grab these settings, 16:384, 40 milliseconds, average 1, bins, keep the maximum line, logarithmic, not linear. Probably the most important is have the range on and go from 0 to -180. Don't put it on auto range. Keep the range on 0 to -180 so that the overall spectrum line stays in one place and you can see where is my kick drum popping up, where is my sub bass popping up. And that really helps to visualize what you're hearing in the mix. Now, I did what I call a test master on here. So you can see 6 dB of makeup gain and a little bit of gain reduction with my master channel glue compressor and limiter. Let's turn those off to be fair. Here's my mix before any master effects. And we still got headroom. At least 2 dB of headroom, which is enough in the digital spectrum world. The main thing we're doing here is I'm trying to make a balanced mix, number one, where you can hear every sound. There is some stereo width. The sounds are not competing with each other in the frequency range, and you end up with headroom at the master channel. Those are my goals for a basic mix. So what did we do? SonarWorks, change spectrum. I key mapped the spectrum to the tab key. This is kind of fun, or whatever that little thing is, that little, like it's an apostrophe, but a backwards one. I love to do this because it helps me get to the master channel quickly. So I enter key mode, hit whatever, you could put whatever key you want on there. But I do that for just a workflow thing. Next, all the input tracks in the session, when I opened this, they were set to like external input 1 and 2. In a small session, that doesn't matter, but if you're working with 50 or 60 tracks, every one of those inputs is causing your computer to convert analog to digital signal, like even from the mic in your laptop. So for good practice, set all your inputs to no input to preserve your RAM so you can have better processing when you're doing big sessions. Organized track layout. This is not the way the original track was. I put the low end, kick and sub down here. I put the drums in the next place, drum fill, snare, hi-hats, instruments in the next section, and then vocals over here. So that when I am mixing, I can easily find the layers. If I want to work in the kick and sub, they're over there on the left, fine. If I want to work with the beats, I love this fill. Got those right there. I got my melodic, harmonic stuff over here in one place, which helps me find them when I want to solo them or EQ them. And then the vocals are in the next one. And we got some effects on the vocals. So this is just kind of organization stuff, but it makes a big difference to have your tracks labeled and organized left to right so you know what kind of sound is in each place. And then I bypass the master effects. I think I said that first. So when I'm making a mix, first thing I do is go to the low end and check out what is happening with the kick and the sub. Kick drum. It's big all the way down to 40 something hertz. I did a little EQ on the kick. Little high end crank on there. And what's fun about this, check out the places that I cut. I did a low shelf cut around 30 hertz, not a high pass filter, but low shelf EQ. These mid bands, listen to that. Getting rid of some of those mid-range frequencies. So that overall the kick drum is just a thumpy low bump without any kind of resonant knocking in the middle, like a Around 600 hertz, you almost always find something to cut. And then around 300 also. And that was all I did for the kick. But you'll see on aux D, I sent the kick and the sub over to a drum bus. We'll take a look at that in a second. And then for the kick drum, when it's playing by itself, the master channel is hitting with -4 dB of gain. And that is headroom that allows us to build up the rest of the mix around it and get the sounds together with headroom before clipping. Okay. Sub bass. Let's see, EQ kick, sub compression leveling. Ah, yeah, the sub was, the different notes of the sub were going kind of like at different levels. So the first thing I wanted to do was compress it in general to get the level staying at the kind of same amount so that every note through the whole song is at the same level. Then I hit it with a sidechain compressor to cut holes in it with the kick drum. So we get this. And Subspan did a great job with EQing. All the sounds have a bunch of EQ work that makes them all sound better. This sub just has basically a low pass filter, which is all you need. I think I raised the low pass filter from super low down in the 50s up to like 140 to just have some more of those harmonics coming through there. Now notice before the drum bus, subs almost can't hear it. I sent the kick and the sub together over to the drum bus, turned on the compressor, took the damping down, played with the transients a little bit to get a nice low end package. You can see that sub is right there, and then the kick drum fills up around it. So that's the first thing I did to get this dubstep mix in shape, is deal with the low end, because that's going to be happening. And you can see when the kick and sub are hitting together, we still got like about 3 dB of headroom, which is enough to add in the other sounds. Now, snare. On the snare track, there was the utility. And for some reason, there was a utility mono on there. No problem with a wide snare, so I bypassed that. And for gain staging, I wanted the input level of the snare coming all the way up in these meters. So these little green meters in between your plugins are showing you the input level of the track. For example, I can mute the output of this track, and we still see those peak levels showing you the level of sound going in through the track. So the whole channel has level in it until you unmute it or control it with the output fader. So for gain staging purposes, these little green meters should be up near the top of the green, almost into the red for every channel in your mix. So you have a big fat level of sound to work with. Then when you bring that sound into the mix, you can fade up this output fader. The one I'm touching right now is called the output fader. And you never have that problem like we saw in mix 1, where I had the output fader of the hi-hats all the way up and it still wasn't loud enough because the input level coming through was not loud enough. So input and output for gain staging are really important. Get the input level, get the sound coming through your channel nice and loud. Then when you touch it with your output fader, you have plenty of sound to bring into the mix. It's kind of like a track with the input level all the way loud is like espresso coffee, like very concentrated. And a track with the input level way down there is like super watery coffee where it doesn't matter how much you drink, it's still never going to taste strong. So got the snare coming in, I made some notes, gain staging, compressor, limiter gain, snare level. Did just a little bit of, I used the makeup gain and the limiter to do the gain staging to get the level loud in there. Hi-hats, what did we do? Bypass the utility. And there was a misunderstanding, I think, with Subspan. He had this utility plugin with the balance and gain subtracting like way down low on this utility plug. And that's leaving not enough signal at the input stage of this sound. So I just bypassed that. And I did a little more compression and some makeup gain so that our output level is going to be nice and loud. Now you can hear the snare taps, you can hear the hi-hats. You can get the rhythm and the meaning of that sound coming through. But I did want to say this is great EQing on here. Before, after. That was all Subspan. So he's cutting out the unnecessary low frequencies from there. Getting rid of that that scratchy crap, and just getting the usable part of the sound up louder in the mix. I love working on people's mixes because you get to know the person. I'm like, all right, this person's really good with EQing. Their gain staging concept is off. We can fix that easily and come out with a great sounding track without breaking our heads. Drum fill. Let's get that loop going. Again, there was a utility plug on there with some gain minus, so we're just going to bypass that. Great EQing, compressor tweak slightly. Before, after. And that didn't need a ton of EQing, but the EQing decisions were good. I think I tweaked the compressor a little bit to just get the level up so that, again, our input levels are showing a nice hot green signal coming through. Then we can raise the output fader to bring it into the mix and get it as loud as we want. Cracking. And these drum fills, like for dubstep, they should almost make you blink. Like, surprising. Now the brass stabs. Let me back that loop off. That's cool. Okay, what did we do on the brass stabs? Well, we bypassed the utility because there was a bunch of minus gain on there. That's like if someone was using the utility gain instead of the output fader. It looks like that's what he was doing. So it's really important to get the difference from that. The utility, if you take away gain in this channel, you're subtracting the level of the input. It's like with a DJ mixer. If you have the utility plugin in the device tray down here on the plugin chain, that's like going to the top of your channel on a DJ mixer and turning the trim knob down or up. That's like what utility is doing. Now, if you think of a DJ mixer, think of the channels where you actually mix with your faders. If your fader is all the way down and the sound is not going out to the speakers or the PA, your input trim, you're not going to hear it. You're going to turn it up and down. If you hit solo, you'll see the LEDs moving. But to hear that, you got to put up the fader and actually hear it coming out. So if live was a DJ mixer, this fader I'm touching right now would be the fader that you touch up and down. That's like the fader. And the utility plugin with this gain inside the channel would be like the trim knob on the top of your mixer, okay? So if you're mixing a track with live, play with the trim knob first to get a nice loud signal coming through, and then use the output fader to bring it into the mix. What did I do on brass stabs? Utility, nice EQ, little compression, get the level in the mix. Let's see that EQ. What makes this a nice EQ? Number one, high pass filter to get rid of the unnecessary lows so we have space for bass, and then a couple of mid-range things to make it just kind of sit nice. Ooh. I like that, cutting down 4 kilohertz. So cool, so that's the brass sound. I know I'm resetting my mix levels. Oh, and then also notice that for atmosphere, I put the wider plugin from Polyverse on here just to kind of have some fun and make this sound feel like there's a little more width going on. So I put the drum fill and the stabs in the atmosphere into the Polyverse wider. Just for fun, quick little thing. Atmosphere. You catching a theme here? I needed to bypass the utility because it was doing subtractive gain, and that was not the right way to approach gain staging. So I just took that off. The strength is EQ on here. Now, I wanted to EQ this because I'm hearing a hiss that didn't really get dealt with yet. So I put a new EQ on after here to do my own EQ, and the main thing was band 7. Tell me if you can hear that. Well, I know it's not live, but this frequency, 2.8K, was really grabbing my ear. And I wanted to cut that out so much that I actually set that to a notch filter. And then I thought, hey, you know what? The high frequencies on here are actually kind of cool. So I wanted to bring up a little bit of that hiss on the top, especially because it says atmosphere. It makes me think of an airy sound. So I did a little bit of a different EQ on here. And later on, I sidechained it with the vocals, but we'll get to that in a second. So right now, what we have is a mix with sub, kick. The beats are cracking and louder. The brass and the atmosphere are filling up the mid-range. I like it that there are only 2 mid-range instruments because it makes it really easy to get them both into the mix. I hear the atmosphere bouncing a little bit in a weird way. If you watch, you'll see when it was bouncing, that was coming some sidechaining from the vocal. And let's bring that in. Now we got 2 vocal tracks. What did I do with the vocals? Pick one at a time. Don't try to work on a sound when you have 2 of them going on. So let's solo that. What is this little thing doing? Not now. Thank you. That was an upgrade message for our recorder. Okay, thank you. Vocals. Track 9, track 10, EQ sidechain, compressor, gain staging, vocal level in the mix, sidechain instruments with the vocals. So same thing I was doing on the other ones. I want to get the level coming through loudly.
Can't keep track, been in the trap, can't keep up.
Did some
Selling
EQ.
party drugs, I'm the one that got the party fun. Selling party drugs, I'm the one that got the party fun. You ain't never sat in the trap.
Here's
with
the
back
original
of the
producer's
doorbell ringing,
EQ.
Your heartbeat like, can't keep track, been in the trap, can't keep up. Selling party drugs, I'm
I
the
wanna
one
make
that
some
got
deeper
the party
cuts.
fun. Selling party drugs, I'm the one that got the party fun. You ain't never sat in a trap with a pack, hit a doorbell ringing, your heartbeat like,
Again, that
can't keep track, been in the
whistling
trap,
kind of thing.
can't keep up.
I cut that down and I added a little high.
Drugs, I'm the one that got the party fun. Selling party drugs, I'm the one that got the party fun.
Did a little
You
bit
ain't
of
never sat in
leveling
a-
with compressor settings, 4:1 ratio, nice slow attack time, and kind of a high knee, which means it's like a soft compressor that's not going to make the vocal feel squished or unnatural.
You ain't never sat in a trap.
Trying to
with a pack,
level
hit
it
a
out so
doorbell
the average
ringing, your
level of the
heartbeat
vocal
like,
is the
can't keep
same.
track,
And then we
been in
turn
the
that
trap,
up with some
can't
makeup
keep
gain.
up. Selling party drugs,
Turned
I'm
it
the
up with
one
some
that got
limiter
the
gain.
party
It's hitting the
fun.
limiter. That might be too much
Selling party drugs, I'm the
limiting.
one that got the party fun. You ain't never sat
Then
in
it's
a
going
trap
into
with
the
a pack,
EQ,
hit a doorbell ringing, your
and-
heartbeat like, can't keep track, been in the trap, can't keep up.
Wait, this doesn't.
Selling party drugs, I'm the one that got the party fun. Selling party drugs, I'm the one that got the party fun. You ain't never sat in a trap with a pack, hit a door.
And there was some hiss on there, so I set up a sidechain compressor
You ain't never sat in a trap with a
Just
pack, hit a
to
doorbell
duck the
ringing, your
level.
heartbeat.
when that sound comes through.
Selling party.
So vocal, little EQ, little compression, get the level smooth so most of it's at an average level, raise that average level higher, do a little sidechain ducking, and then we'll talk about reverb afterwards. Vocal 10 is got some cool automation on there with a low pass filter. So I pretty much left this one alone. And I think I adjusted the compression settings on there in a similar way to get average level working, a little bit of limiter.
You ain't never sat in a trap with a pack, hit a doorbell ringing your heart.
Now, I'll talk about sidechaining the instruments in a second. Effects. Original reverb, I didn't love it, so I put on the hybrid reverb with plate type. There's dry.
You ain't never sat in a trap with a trap. Can't keep up. Selling party drug.
And this track has a lot of space in the mix, so
You ain't never sat in a trap with a pack, hit a doorbell ringing your heart. Can't keep track.
a lot of room in the mix, so there's plenty of room for a reverb with a long tail, and I EQ'd a little bit of the mids out of here. If you remember where I was EQing in the vocal, I had a notch out, 3.7K, something in that kind of hissy, screechy area. So I went to the reverb and pulled down something in that same area. So the reverb is EQ'd the same way that the vocal is EQ'd, and avoid any kind of buildup in that hissy, screechy frequency range that makes it hard to listen to. Great little trick. Great little trick is EQ your reverbs the same way that you EQ your vocals, so they come together and make this one glued-in unit that sits nicely together. Now, we did some sidechaining. This was kind of an idea that came later in the mix. At this point so far, I went back through, I raised the kick drum up a little bit, got the kick and sub working together. Played with my levels. And I thought, you know what? Now I'm going to sidechain the vocals into the instruments. So I set up the sidechain compressor, triggered by vocals on the brass tabs. I love that reverse. And same thing on the atmosphere. I just copied the sidechain compressor, put it on there, so that when we have
You ain't never sat in a trap with a pack, hit a doorbell ringing your heartbeat like.
when we have the mid-range unit, of instruments, synth, bass, vocals, those are all going to get glued together. The vocal's going to be in front and the instruments are just kind of ducking and riding behind it. I think of instruments and vocals as basically one instrument. It's an instrument group. That's a stack that goes from high frequency down to mid-range, not into sub-bass. And you want everything in that group to sit together and feel right in the mix, which is why we were I was happy to see some EQ taking out the low frequencies in the brass stabs, because that low frequency area is where our kick and sub are going to live. And this can be just a nice thick section. That's with our wider on C, our plate on A, and there was some delay automation on B on the vocals. Over here. The delay is happening with the dry wet control on track 10. So that's how that's working. Go back, automation on. And finally, after I mixed the effects, plate on, yep, plate, delay, a little bit different. Now for the master mix, I made some adjustments. Let's get this all back on here. I raised the levels a little bit with the kick and bass. Went to the master channel. Watch your ears. I put in a gentle glue compressor. I don't want to talk at the same time as the vocals. Gentle glue compressor with a side high pass filter on the input, so that the kick drum is not going to make the compressor bump on every kick. I was kind of trying to avoid that. I don't want to make this sound like I'm mastering or squishing it to death. I wanted to basically take my test mix, raise the level so you can listen to it, and have it come out loud enough with a little compression so I know where the levels are, the peaks are not clipping, and it's just a nice, loud, rough mix. You can see there's not too much gain reduction happening here. It is catching the transients, but not too bad. And let's look at the spectrum. I think the hi-hats could even come up a little bit. Let's see if we can push the drum fills even more. There you can see the sidechain dumping from the vocal. Break it on. So that's what I did. It's a simple process of going through every channel and asking the question, is this sound loud enough at the input stage? Do the little peak meters at the input of the track, do they show a nice loud level? That's number one for every track. Number two, what are the frequencies happening in the track? Do I need to EQ it and cut out anything like low frequencies or sharp hissing mids? Then you can bring that sound into the mix, read your master channel level, make sure you have headroom all the time, and go from there to make a balanced mix. If you work with every sound individually, clean it up and get a nice loud level, then you can build those sounds into a mix where you have plenty of headroom at the master level, you can hear every sound, the low end is thumping, you have stereo width, and the sounds are not fighting each other in the mid-range frequency range. That's pretty much all you have to do to make a great mix. I know it's easier said than done. If you want some help with this, click into the links around this video underneath or in the bio or something. I teach how to mix, and I have a great course called Make Space for Bass where you actually can learn by mixing inside live. You can start Make Space for Bass free to download a live pack and see how my hands-on lessons work. Why would you try to learn by watching a video? You should learn by making a mix inside live. Same way when you're driving, you don't learn to drive by watching race car drivers on video. You learn to drive by getting in the car and driving with other crazy people on the road. So learn by doing it is the whole thing about why I teach this stuff, because that's the most fun for you. So click the links around this video. I want you to follow Mixitexture, subscribe to Mixitexture, watch my next videos, drop comments when you have questions, let me know what you need help with or what you don't understand, and we'll get you one step closer to making tight, solid, bass-heavy mixes that you feel really, really good about, so you can DJ with them, get them mastered, put them out, release them, shop them to labels, and live your life. All right, I'm Steve Knotts. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. And thank you, Subspan, for sharing this track. I'm going to send you this after mix right now.